Computer. Hi, this is Sue Greenwald with Awakened Stories. I'm here today with Deanna Carr with The Mystical Moonlight. Hey, Dee, how are you?
I'm good today. How's it going?
Well, I'm glad to talk to you again. We had a question on the channel. I don't know if you got to see it. We did a video about mermaids, like let's say a week or so ago. And the question was, can mermaids be cursed? Can they be turned into vengeful siren spirits?
Yes and no. So they can be turned into vengeful spirits. But most of the time it's not from, somebody cursing them. Most of the time it's from the atmosphere around them. So it's kind of like, natural environment. What are they around? What's, polluting their minds? So there are curses. I mean, people have put curses on them, but when we talk about all the vengeful mermaids and the ones that are going out and like haunting and hunting down people, more the negative side, those ones are mostly from, their environment. They are here to serve a purpose. And when their purpose is not being served, their soul and mind start twisting. And that's when they become more vengeful because they are upset.
Okay,
That makes sense.
so when you say their environment, they're surrounded by negativity and darkness. Like,
Yes. So
yeah.
think about it this way. They're here to help protect and make the earth better,
Right,
correct?
right, okay.
So when there's people who are hunting, haunting, hurting the earth, it makes their job harder. They feel it. So we've detached ourselves. So not all of us feel these emotions to what's actually like how the earth feels, how the plants feel, how the animals feel. So we don't truly feel that.
Right.
But imagine if you could. And that is where they're at. They can feel these energies. They can feel what the whales are going through, what the dolphins are going through, what the sea itself is going through. And all of those negative emotions start to twist the mind and soul. So that is more of their curse is what they're actually feeling. When we talk about when I hear curse, I think, there's a witch that put a curse on somebody. That doesn't happen too much to mer people. It's more to humans because we just dabble in the dark a little bit more.
Right. Okay. That may well said. Thank you. Anything else we should know about the mermaids to finish that up a little bit more that we didn't
Um,
last time?
they, like I said in the last statement, like they can feel more than we can.
Right.
And, we've detached ourselves so much that it's going to take a while. And that doesn't mean everybody. I mean, empaths are, very particular to feeling that more than others. But I'm trying to think of a way to really establish an understanding. Um, Avatar, the movie with the blue people,
Yeah.
where they can connect their little hair
Yeah.
particles to the
Yeah.
earth and then they see through these other beings. It's pretty much like that, but they do it naturally. So let's say the whale got a cut, that mermaid feels like it got a cut. So they are really attached to what's their surrounding is. That's why they're here to protect it because they wouldn't go out and try hurting the things because they are feeling it. They wouldn't try to hurt themselves. They would try to protect it and heal it.
Wow. Excellent clarification. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. So today's topic was going to be fairies. Now, we had talked about fairies 9, 10, 11 months ago, and coincidentally, we were cut off like 4 or 5 times. So we're going to do it again and see how far we get. All right. So,
Yep.
question, are fairies from Earth originally, or are they from another planet?
It's a good question.
And of course,
I get their I
go
get they're from Earth, but we do have a mix of fairy species. So what I've told people before is some fairies are actually fallen angels. So they're here to protect, heal, raise the vibration of the earth. But some of them were already here because I mean the earth needs tending and mending and all that kind of thing. But some of them have come from different planets or from different species, and they've just kind of established that they are fairies.
Okay. Well, it's really unfair to lump fairies into like, there's a lot of species within the fairy category, so,
Yeah, honestly, with every topic we've talked about, it's hard to categorize one
right.
because there are more. And it's just like everything, even for humans, we're not all humanoid. Like we're here from different planets, but at some point we took on this humanoid form. So,
Mhm. Okay, that's a whole new topic. We'll have to
yeah,
talk
sorry.
about. Okay, so some were here or are here to help the earth. Some might have come from other planets. Now you said some were fallen angels. So when I think of a fallen angel, I think of an angel that's like bad. It got kicked out of heaven, boom, and it's down here for punishment or get out of our club.
So this is where people that are more religious are probably not going to like my statements, but fallen angels aren't always bad. We've put that idea that they're these negative beings, that they've gone against these good people, but most of the time the fallen angels are actually the ones that were trying to protect humans and trying to better them. So there's a lot of, differentiation between the good angels and the bad angels, whole different conversation. But fallen angels don't have to be bad. They are just trying to do something that was good, that was against the rules. And, helping humans isn't always a good thing. And some people don't always think that it was going to be beneficial, but they felt like we need to help them. So yeah, a lot of the fallen angels came down to actually help mend and heal the earth, versus, some of the stories we've heard about how horrible they are and how they wanted destruction and destroy. But they're still here helping. They may not know that they're fallen, like they may have their, memories wiped, kind of like how we do. So they just think that they're fairies, that they're just helping the earth and all of that. They don't always know that they were, fallen.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Okay, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
All right, so I think what we should do is separate the categories, and that will allow you to answer the questions better. So let's
Yes.
talk about fairies that reside mostly on land. So
Okay.
we've got different categories. So we've got like the fairies that are flying, like
Mhm.
the Tinkerbell kind or whatever. Like a lot of
Yeah.
times in drawings, we see them as purple and pink and petite and small. So what would you call those kind of fairies? Just fairies, right?
Fairies, yeah. I mean, it's hard because you categorize them all as fairies, but they do have specific jobs. I always tell people, I don't like Disney, but they do a good job with showing how they separate in what they're doing, how they're categorized. And some of them have similar powers, but for the most part, they all have their own jobs. So, like I said, they're here to help mend and heal the earth. So that means many, many things.
Right.
So, talking about just like the Tinkerbell, some are here to create new things to help us. Some are here to help the flowers, the plants, some the animals. So they really have a like specific job or something that they're working on, and then they all have, their base power too.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So what abilities do they have? They can fly for the most part. Can they go invisible?
Yes. I mean, why do you think nobody can find them?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, they have to let you see them. You have to establish some sort of relationship with them for them to allow you to see them, especially in full formation. I mean, how many people have actually seen a full-on fairy? It's very limited.
Yeah,
But I mean, if you talk to the regular population,
right.
no, there's going to be very sparse people that said, "Hey, I saw a fairy."
Right.
Um, or if they say it, they'll say like they saw a little like mist or dust or something like that. So you have to establish a boundary and relationship for fairies to feel comfortable to allow them to allow you to see them.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what would be the purpose of these? Like, we'll call them flying fairies or whatever. And in my opinion, they're different size. They can be super small, like, I don't know, little, like a couple inches to maybe
Mhm.
6 or 8 inches long. Would you agree
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah. They're going to be more on the smaller side.
Yeah. And
It's
we,
one is to keep themselves hidden. And also they have more places that they can create their homes with versus if they're larger.
okay.
So the size actually is to their advantage. Um, and then it also helps them to move faster to get to where they need to be. Whereas when they realize if they're larger, it doesn't really help them in any way and actually cause more chaos for them. So they were larger at one point and then shrunk down.
Okay. So do they, when we talk about technology, we talk about mechanical technology. They don't
Yes.
really have that, but they have abilities so they can fly, they can go invisible. And their job is to heal the earth, right? To heal. Okay. So how do they do that? Like what do they do? Like,
Okay, so like I said, the best way to think about it is, through the Disney Tinkerbell, um, they have their powers specific to what their jobs are. So, think about it. The light fairy was able to mend and bend the elements of light. The other one was able to manipulate water. They still all had a base power, which usually is flying, but they do have invisibility, cloaking. They are telepathic. And then they have that base power. Now, some can intermingle, some have more than just one power. But for the most part, it's whatever their job or goal is specifically that's they're really going to advance in.
perfectly said. So I know, like on, say, Facebook, there's these groups and they've shown dead fairies that fit in someone's palm, or they've found a little shoe that was like an inch long or whatever. Are those fairies that we've seen on those? I know you shared one a while ago. Are those
Yeah,
fairies?
most of them are fairies.
Okay.
So that's that's a hard spot to get into because they're supposed to kind of dissipate when they die. They're supposed to kind of go back in and kind of re-pop up. I don't know how else you want to say it. It's kind of like a going into dust and then a new fairy comes into the picture. So for them to stay around after a death is very odd.
Wow.
So
Okay.
those ones that you see after death were here for a purpose, and it's probably to share that, hey, fairies are real. But yeah, fairies are not supposed to stay around after death.
Okay, let's say our fairy dies.
Mhm.
And it goes into dust or it ashes and it blows away or whatever. Does that same consciousness of the same fairy have a new body?
Yes.
Ooh,
And usually it becomes more advanced. So it's kind of like a lifespan that progresses. So they've gone through their lifespan. They understand what they're supposed to be doing, how to really help. And when they come back the next round, they have more abilities to help progress their next lifespan. Whereas for us, we kind of do the same thing, but we forget it. So it's starting from scratch.
so they don't lose their memories when they die.
No,
Okay. 'Cause one of my questions was, can they be killed? And I kind of think you answered
yeah,
that.
they can be
Now,
killed.
years ago, I've read books on fairies and they talk about how pesticides, kill them or are bad for them. They're in the grass, they're in the bushes, they're here, they're there. And when you mow your lawn or put pesticides down, that's really bad for them. Would you
Mhm.
agree with that? It's
Oh
bad for
yeah.
the earth.
It's just like kind of going back into the beginning of the mermaid talk, how they can feel the energies and elements. So when Fern Gully is a great
I
reference.
was just
Remember
gonna
when
mention that. Yeah,
they
yeah.
they touched a tree, like can't you feel it? They can feel it. They can feel everything. So they do feel more. So it does make it harder for them.
Yeah.
But the other part, they can, come back and try different ways to help progress.
Okay. So do fairies wear clothes then?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I
Do
do.
they have to wear
It's
clothes or?
no, I mean they just wear like most of the time they wear clothes. They're not nudists. I mean, I guess there could be nudist fairies. Um, but for the most part they do just because they feel more comfortable. Their clothes aren't like ours where they're as, condensed and controlling. They're more airy and light and it doesn't really feel like you're wearing anything. So for them it's just, it's just something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like that movie Fern Gully because it shows you, how they've got a society and they all have their job. They bring
Mhm.
about the seasons and the harvest and this and that. And then,
Yeah.
the bad guys come and cut down all the trees. There's
Mhm.
chaos in the
Yeah.
forest.
And it shows you how the pollution really hurts and harms them. So yeah,
Yeah.
that one is another good reference for how do fairies, work with their elements around them with the other, beings and animals and creatures and all that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was my next question. Do they work with animals?
Of course. Now, like I said before, they're just talking about the lands ones. There's ones that work specifically with the animals, but all of them do, have connection with animals.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
All right, now, so we've talked about, we'll call them the regular fairies. A lot of movies, they have magic wands and they sprinkle fairy dust and all that. Is that true?
Yeah. They have fairy dust. They don't have magic wands.
Okay.
Yeah. They don't when you become more advanced in, I guess, spirituality, you realize that you don't need magic wands. So they're at the point where they don't need them. They understand how to work with um the materials around them, with the elements around them without having to have an object to do
Right,
so.
right, right, okay. And we've also heard rumors of fairies being playful, meaning they'll hide your keys. They'll
Yeah.
if they're in your house, they can hide stuff on you and put it in different dimensions and this and that.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. They do it all the time to us.
yeah.
Wait, okay, so if your stuff is gone missing, stop looking for it, because then the fairies will get bored and it will pop out of nowhere. Literally. You'll look in the same spot 20 times, it's not there. You leave, you forget about it, you go back, it's right where you looked 20 times.
Yeah.
So yeah, when they really started messing with us, I mean, we would spend like an hour, especially my husband. He'd look for his keys. The keys, the phone, the wallet. Three important things to leave the house would always go missing. It'd drive us crazy. An hour looking, where'd it go? Where'd it go? And we stopped looking and then it'd show up. So we're at the point, well, at least I am. I'm like, yeah, it is what it is. It'll come out eventually. And literally, I tell him to stop looking. 2 seconds later, it's appeared out of nowhere.
Okay.
So they are very playful. Um, but like I said, my advice is if your fairy is bothering you, just ignore it and your stuff will magically appear where you've looked 20 times.
So you have a fairy infestation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. It's every day.
Which
And
I
most
think is it's a good thing though, because don't fairies like lighten the vibration in your
yeah.
household? Okay.
Yeah, you do want them around.
Yeah.
I think for us, because we're more time based and like we have more like we feel like we have limited time because we have this idea that we are done at a
Yeah.
certain point. So we're
Yeah.
like time, time, time. Whereas they're like, I'm coming back, so I'm gonna have some fun and I'll be back in a little bit. So they have more of this playful energy. Like, yes, they are like, hey, I gotta get this done. I gotta help heal the earth, do this, this, and this. But they have more of that, work and play balance
Yeah.
versus humans.
Right. Okay.
So for us, it's frustrating because it's like, well, I have to leave 10 minutes ago and I can't find these keys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, haha, gotcha.
Okay. Well, how about this question? I have heard, and I think we talked about that fairies are like a subsection of angels. Okay, so they have the same abilities as angels, but they're here, their mission is different, is a way to explain it. Would that,
Yeah, so they're more earth-based. So they're here mostly to help the earth. Now, so I work with fairies for healing like humans and their emotions and chakras and stuff. So they have the ability to help humans. You just have to, one, allow the will.
right,
Like you have to say, fairies help me. But also you have to understand how to work with them. So that's where I said, like, you kind of have to have this, connection with them, so that way they'll actually want to work with you. For the
right,
most part, they don't care about humans. They just are doing their job. They find us fascinating and interesting, and they'll mess with us. But for the most part, they're not going to go out of their way and try to heal humans, because one, that's breaking like our will, because we didn't ask for it. And then two, they do kind of resent us in some ways for what we do to the planet.
right, right. Okay, makes sense. And you're doing is it a, oh, okay. You did a fairy healing a couple weeks ago, but you're gonna do these events where the fairies will do a group healing on those that request it. You'll have one of those in the future. So that's
Yeah,
really,
I have another one coming up June 15th.
okay,
And then I think that's like in a Saturday. And then I'm gonna try to do it at least once a month.
yeah,
Those ones are group fairy healings, and that's just whoever joins, you'll get your healing. Most people don't understand how great a fairy healing is. So I've done them in the past, and I can do them over the phone. So I can, tap into your energy, but the fairies come in. So whatever's around you, whatever fairies are there to help heal you, and you'll actually feel your chakras being opened and cleansed. And most of my clients afterwards say how amazing and light they feel afterwards.
right,
Fairies have a higher rate of healing our chakras than we do. So Reiki is a good way to heal, but using fairy energy mixed with Reiki energy is going to push it above, that basic healing. So yeah, they have a lot of abilities to help us, but like I said, you have to also allow the will
right,
to let them help us.
right. So I've experienced the fairy healing and I've witnessed it. So I was so interested to see what you were doing. And for those that didn't see the interview about Deanna becoming awakened, years ago we were doing Reiki or whatever at my yoga studio, and she was doing all this like stuff with her hands. And she didn't know any of the spiritual stuff like, us old guys did, right? So I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, well, I'm telling the fairy to take the chakra out, flatten it, clean it, spin it, do this, do that. And I'm like, I was stunned because you didn't even know about chakras at that point or any of the things you were talking about. So it blew my mind, but it also confirmed to me that what she was doing was the real deal. So it's fascinating. So cool.
Yeah. I always tell people, like, because we'll do video and you'll see like my hands going,
Yeah.
and like, don't mind that.
Yeah. Cool.
It's just a way to work with them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So June 15th, you're doing a group Harry feeling. Very healing
Okay.
through like Zoom or whatever, right? And
Yeah, through my website. So it's a great way for people to heal. A lot of my clients have massive blockages on their chakras. So some people know the basics to Reiki, but like I've said in other interviews, sometimes you just need a little help to
yeah,
break through that big barrier to really mend and heal certain aspects of yourself.
yeah.
And fairies do a great job. Like I said, it's not just Reiki that's coming in. The fairies around you are coming in and they're doing their magic.
Awesome, awesome, interesting. So we've talked about like we'll call them the flying regular fairies, but there's other fairies or like subsections of fairies that work on the land. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Like
so it's kind of like categorized. So you have like your woodland fairies, your forest fairies, your rainforest fairies. So there's pretty much every subsection we have in environments has a specific fairy type for them.
yeah,
One, because they're all in different types of terrains in general. and then they want to be in the area that they're healing and helping.
Right.
So they're going to be more based off of what they're doing for that specific area.
Okay. Okay. So would you categorize an elf? Like, I've always thought the elves just work with like bushes or whatever, or trees. Like, are elves part of this fairy category, or how would you? I know it's hard to categorize them.
Oh, well, here's the thing. Elves, I don't really work with elves.
Okay.
There's a reason for that. Fairies do a lot more than elves do. Elves are more of the kind of creatures or whatever you want to call them that sometimes you got to be wary of, because they do have more of the sense of materialistic ideals. So they can be more bought off than fairies can.
Okay.
So that's why I don't really work with elves. They are bigger than fairies. They do kind of live in the same type of terrain, like they can, live like fairies do, but they are, a larger species. Elves are what you want to call kind of playful. So they'll do the same thing. They'll take your stuff. Here's the difference though. Fairies, once they realize that you're kind of upset and you're done playing, they'll give it back. Elves, on the other hand, won't. They don't care. They're not all of them, but most of them are not as nice.
Okay. Okay. And
So
from the folklore, like elves like shiny things, and of course they like gold, and then
yes.
so that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so they're more materialistic.
Okay.
Like you said, the gold and all that. Um, so they can be kind of bought off. So that's where you can't really trust what an elf is doing or why it's doing it. Um,
Okay.
so yeah.
So can one of the dark forces buy an elf, like give it coins or jewels or whatever, and
Yep.
say, do this, that, and that? Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. And
Yeah.
that's what they do.
So yeah, that's what they do. So it's easier for them to be manipulated. So it's very easy for dark forces to come in, and over time, the elf will actually take on a new shape. So we think of elves like in the shows and stuff. They're whimsical, they're light, they're all that. That's how they start off. But if they're being, constantly bought off, if they're constantly working for darker forces, they will actually take on a new identity and image. So after a while, you'll be able to differentiate which one is which and what side they're on.
Okay.
But that takes a little bit of time. So, like I said, at first you can't really tell what side they're on or why they're doing something.
Oh, that's interesting. So what are leprechauns the same as elves then?
Yes, they're
Oh,
just kind of like cousins in a sense.
okay.
Yeah.
They always have those little top hats and
Not really. That's just because they're from, a different
yeah.
country. So they do a little bit of a different shape. But yeah, I don't
Okay.
know.
And so they can also be bought off, leprechauns.
Yeah. Most of the time we talk about how leprechauns are these, same thing, cool creatures, awesome, but they can be bought off very easily. And they can, have dark entities and forces with them.
Okay. And so one day, let's say a leprechaun or an elf do like a lot of negative things and they start to change shape. Do they
Mhm.
change into uh, like these horrible gargoyles, or like,
Think of it like Lord of the Rings.
I was just gonna say like
Yeah,
goblins.
that's a good, yeah. Where you can physically see it. It's kind of like they're I don't know, wasting away. They're like, what's the word when they start like decaying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
Like, yeah.
Emaciated, like they're just like,
Mhm.
yeah. So could they be 2, 3 feet tall?
About like that's probably as tall as they'll get. They won't get any taller than that. I would say they're a little bit smaller.
Okay.
Um, and they do have the ability to blend in and, you know, hide. So it is harder to find them versus, other creatures. but probably the tallest they could get is about 2 feet.
Okay.
But like I said, they're like fairies. They're on the smaller side,
Yeah.
so I don't even know if 2 feet would be a correct
Okay.
height for them.
Okay. Well, I had something that looked like Gollum from the movie visit me, and he had pointed teeth, and he bit chunks of meat out of my arm.
Yeah, that would be a troll.
Okay. So
Trolls can range. Trolls can range from small to large to
yeah,
large, large.
yeah.
Uh, and for this world, we don't really have massive trolls that we come by often. So if that was the case, it would have been a troll on the smaller side.
Yeah. And you know how Gollum in the movie has like really big eyes, of course he's probably like CGI or whatever. And
Okay.
occasionally he could be friendly. This guy had like smaller, beady, mean looking eyes and pointed teeth. And he was like he took chunks out of my arm, and it really hurt.
Yeah.
So what about gnomes? Are gnomes?
Gnomes are good. Gnomes are, I guess you'd consider them more of the happier side of elves. They're pretty much in the same category, but they're going to remain more positive, but they are still considered the same, like species.
Okay, okay. So trolls like they're like somewhat misshapen, and they're
They're
not
they're
positive.
misshapen. Trolls are interesting too because trolls can get, like I said, range from small to super large.
Yeah.
They do work with the earth, most of them, but it's like a mixture between fairy and elves. So some of them can be bought off. So the one that you met has already deformed and changed. So that one is working on the dark side. For the most part, trolls are a little bit on the nicer side. They tend to work more with the earth. Um, they do blend in. So a great way to think about it is like they can blend into rocks. They can blend into, the trees around them. So they can remain hidden even if they're large. Um, on our plane right now, we don't have too many super large trolls. They're more on the smaller to medium size because it's easier for them to get around that way.
Yeah. And we often hear like folklore about trolls living under bridges. Is that true?
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
okay.
the
But
medium ones are like the smaller ones are probably going to be under a bridge. It's easy to hide there. I mean, they're not going to be under a water bridge though. I mean, that doesn't make sense.
okay.
But it's easier for them to hide and stay out of sight, and then it's easy shelter.
Yeah.
So that's really why they would be hiding under the bridge. A lot of them in the folklore say like, oh, you got to pay the toll troll. Um, some of them are guardians. So when we talk about the toll troll, that's really what it is. There's some sort of exchange to get across. And it's not specific on the troll, it's what they're there for. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
So they don't want like coins or shiny things. They want whatever.
When they're on the toll troll, they're being told this is your mission by somebody else. So this is what you collect for them to get across. If you don't do so, it's you that's getting in trouble. So if they're there collecting coins, it's not because they want to be there, it's because they're told to be there.
Oh, interesting. Who tells them that? Dark forces.
Whoever's got a hold of them.
Okay.
And usually it's gonna be a dark force. I mean, what light force and be like, you gotta pay me all this money to get across?
Yeah.
Like, that makes no sense.
True, true. Okay, very interesting. Wow, okay. Stuff I didn't really plan to talk about or think about. So interesting.
Yeah.
So are we've talked about, fairies, elves, gnomes, leprechauns, any
Mhm.
other type of earth or land-based fairies that we have?
No, those are most of the classifications for the land-based. Now, like I said, all the fairies themselves have different jobs. So, you got your water, well, water is going to go into water, but like you have ones that are working with trees, the plants, the animals. Um, the lights. So they kind of go into different classifications. But yeah, everyone has their job that they're doing and they're supposed to be helping the earth.
Okay,
So,
super interesting. All right, so
mm,
let's talk about water fairies. So
okay.
we've talked about these before where we see like we're out at a lake or a pond or a river and we see like a lot of sparkles moving around, like colored sparkles. Those are
Hmm.
water fairies, right?
Hmm.
What do we call fairies? Like anything special?
I don't know what you'd call them. I just call them water fairies.
Yeah.
I mean, people get them mistaken for nymphs. Um, so I just classify them as water fairies.
Okay.
I don't know a different name for them, but yeah, you're gonna see them. Usually it's like more sparkly. They do have more of a mer-like shape just to move around the water. I mean, wings do not work in water, at all. So they have to take on a different type of shape when they're actually in the water and
Okay.
they're moving around.
All right. So can they come up out of the water and breathe air though too? So they breathe through water and
Yeah, they can do both. It's a little harder for them to stay in air long periods of time, especially depending on what they do in the water. So they'll stay in as long as they can, and then they'll when they come out, they can usually come out for a short period of time.
okay. So
Yeah.
just like land fairies, the water fairies have a mission, which is working to
Mhm.
clean and clear the water and work with the plants and the animals
Mhm.
or the fish under the water.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
exactly. Yeah.
They have
So
the
they
same,
clear it. They do most of them do work with like the mermaids and all that.
yeah,
So they work with the elements around them.
yeah.
Um, and then they work with the fish. They have different, they still are telepathic, so they can have communication with the different creatures around them.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. So
Mhm.
same kind of jobs, just different terrain.
Exactly.
Okay. Do
Yeah.
they have mer tails or do they have legs?
They have tails. It makes them move faster.
Wow.
So that when they come up for, they usually don't come out onto lands. If they do, they can transform. But like I said, it's for a very short period of time because they're more water based.
Okay.
And usually if they come out to the water, it's to work at the top of the water,
Okay.
like towards like the, let's say the sea meets the sand, they'll work there.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a little bit different than, full on change like a mer person.
Okay. So one thing I wanted to ask is, does a fairy have like a territory? Let's say they're there to help a trees, okay?
Mhm.
Are they assigned a tree, like a grove, or the forest, like, or any tree that they fly around? How does that work?
They're mostly assigns, but that's by intuition. So it's not like someone's got to check, oh, you're
Yeah,
at the right location today.
yeah.
It's more by intuition where they're supposed to be. So there could be multiple fairies healing one specific tree. They're not going to work the whole forest like in one day. They would if they switched between trees for a larger forest. Um, that would take them a while. So usually they have a smaller area they're going to work in. And that's also why I said like they'll kind of stay where they're going to be working. They're not going to travel miles and miles to go work somewhere else.
Makes sense.
They kind of like live where they work.
Okay, makes sense. Same with the water fairies, I assume. Now,
Yeah.
water is fluid and moves around, but they're probably going to stay in their like geographic area to work there, is my assumption.
Yes. Yeah.
So then the question is, these fairies are plentiful. They're all over the earth, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't see fairies or if there aren't fairies near, there's a reason for it. And that's not good.
All right. So let's say we have a heavily polluted area. Okay, like somebody is dumping chemicals into the water, like it's really nasty water. Do they
Yeah.
live there or are they on the edges, like trying to clean it that way?
They're gonna be moving out and they're gonna be working from the edges at a certain point. They would be dying from it. So when we talk about heavy pollution like that, it's harder for them to actually work because I mean, they can still die. So it is harder for them to clean areas that are heavily polluted. That's why there's so much decay there.
Wow, okay. So we had talked about when the fairies die, they come back, so they're resurrected and they have a new body. Do they look the same? Does the new body look the same? I mean, I don't know if fairies, yeah,
Kind of. They still go through the cycle, but they they look pretty much the same. I think there's probably some changes. It's just the same spirits.
okay. And then they have their memories. And how long in our time does it take them to pop back up again?
Oh, it's pretty quick. Maybe at most like 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's they're very quick. Um, and they can kind of get right back into it. They don't have like a baby phase. Like they kind of come back and their energy's flowing. So their
Okay.
baby phase is maybe a day.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So then for polluted water, these fairies will die and it takes them, let's say, a couple weeks to come back. They keep coming back, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But it's
It,
better if
it's
they didn't die.
if they die, it takes them a little bit to come back. But when we talk about a heavy polluted area, it's not just going to be one die, it's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
So there's no fairies keeping it clean and clear while the fairies are coming back.
Yeah.
All of
Yeah.
them are gone. So it's going to take a while for them to all come
Yeah.
back. And
Yeah.
when they come back, it takes a little bit to get it back to normal. By that time, they're already dead again.
Yeah.
So that's why one, they'd move out of the area so that way they can keep their cycle a little bit more balanced,
Yeah.
and they have a spot to kind of go off to,
Yeah.
and they aren't going to die as often.
Okay. Okay. All right. So water fairies, there's like, we'll call them
Hmm.
like one kind or one flavor, if you will. How about air fairies? Now, are they different than the land and the water fairies?
I would kind of consider them more a lands fairy, but they do specialize in air. So I
Okay.
mean, I guess you just classify them as air fairies, but they're more above land. So whatever you choose. They're working in the airs, they're working with the clouds. So there's different things that they do, mend and heal. So their powers are a little different. Um, but there's a lot of air fairies because they need to keep the pollution down for our air quality. So they do help the trees out, and like I said, the clouds, trying to get everything maintained and stay maintained.
Right. Okay. So how do they like our chemtrails? I wonder, like, for a while last year, the last couple of years, it's been insane with
Yeah.
chemtrails. And they're gridding the skies and all of that. So they're working to combat that is my guess.
They are, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's a con, but it's just like every one is kind of focusing on some sort of pollution in some sense.
Okay.
So their pollution tends to be the chemtrails, if explosions go off, that kind of thing, the negative repercussions to the air quality and quality control.
Okay.
Um, so they'll help mend it. Chemtrails, it's harder for them to maintain because once it's in the air, it kind of just gets everywhere and it's hard to control in general.
Yeah. Now, do they fly up to where the plane is, where it's squirting out the stuff, and do they tackle it there, or does it have to sprinkle out before they can tackle it?
It's easier if it sprinkles out for them. If they're trying to get to the plane, most of them are going to get hurt or harmed. So they can't really get onto the plane, do the whole spy thing where they destroy it before it gets out. So for them, it's easier to maintain once it's out, which is harder too because it's already out and then it's already all through air particles.
Yeah.
So either way, it's kind of like a losing battle, but they're trying.
Okay. Any other kinds of fairies that we should talk about?
Think that kind of covers them all,
All
right?
right.
I don't know.
All right, that's so how, if we wanted to assist the fairies, what are the best things that we can do as humans?
Okay, so if we're talking about water fairies, stop with plastic altogether because the plastic's getting into the rivers, the oceans, and it's causing destruction in that way. Think about what type of materials we use. Like, is it going to leave its mark afterwards?
Right.
And I know it's hard because everything we do seems like it's going to leave its mark on this earth.
Yeah, yeah,
So take small steps to see if you can change or if you can go more eco-friendly.
right,
Not everything out there is eco-friendly, but if you can make subtle changes, try to do that, and that will really help the fairies. The other thing you can do for land fairies would be putting out bright crystals, having rainbow energy around, keeping plants around. If you don't have a green thumb, there are plants that, are good for keeping the fairy energy up, but are easy for you to maintain. So try to keep some sort of
right,
energy source for them to keep them happy and uplifting.
right, right. And so what you told me years ago was to keep flowers in the house and plants in the house. It brings up the vibration of the house. Of course, they're beautiful and all of that, but it brings up the vibe for the fairies.
Yes.
Okay. And then what I've done before, like I've gone to the beach and I've picked up trash and the fairies
Mhm.
were thanking me. Like
Yeah.
I saw glass, I saw hooks on the beach and all of that. Someone's going to
Mhm.
be hurt anyways, and it's just nasty. So I usually try to pick up trash. And I would also recommend you not use chemical pesticides in your yard. That stuff travels and it affects everything. It gets into our water, it affects pets, it affects everything, right?
Yeah, there is great alternatives to pesticides. Um, and honestly, we're at a shared world. So, I mean, what we say is if you're out in their worlds, don't be going off and killing them.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, it is a problem sometimes. So if it's a big problem, get natural. Don't use, especially like the bad companies, don't use them because they are going to kill off more than what you expect.
totally. And they've
Yeah.
designed it that way so that when you spray your dandelion or whatever, it drifts off into the wind, it gets into the soil. All right. So, I try to eat organically and even though there might be a field next door that's getting sprayed, that stuff still floats through the air onto the plants and onto your fruit and vegetables. Horrible. Yeah.
And honestly, most of the stuff that they want us to spray with these chemicals is stuff that we actually need. So, like you said, dandelions, those are actually very beneficial to our bodies, but most of us spray them off because we don't want weeds.
Right.
So look into what you're actually spraying, not only what you're spraying, but what you're spraying on them.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much for explaining about fairies. And like you
Yeah.
said, you have a thing, fairy healing June 15th, you said, and it will be
Yep.
on your website, The Mystical Moonlight, which I'll put a link in the video. I'm laughing because I usually screw the name up a little bit.
Yeah.
Anything else we need to say about fairies?
No, I think we're good. If anybody has any questions or comments, just put it down and we'll address it later on.
Right. Thank you so much, Deanna.
Of course.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right. Bye-bye.